This is the Warroom presented by the Sideline Journal. The film doesn't lie. Let's get to work.
Welcome back to the Warroom presented by the Sideline Journal. I'm your host, Mason Wrather, the Sideline Journal, and joining me today is the man with more draft boards than some NFL teams, Liam Carr.
What's going on, everybody? Glad to be back. That draft week was wild, wasn't it? We've got some hot takes to settle.
Yeah, some of those picks may just kind of look like profits, some of them not so much, but don't worry, we're going to be breaking them all down here on this next episode of the Warroom.
Yeah, plus we've got a new segment we've got called the Best Draft Class Draft. We're going to go head-to-head, snake-style picking the teams that we think nailed this thing.
And you already know we're going to say some fire takes for the hot take showdown. You know, I hear the rumor out there is that that Travis Hunter is not a generational talent. Who knows?
Hey, too soon, man. Too soon.
Buckle up. Episode 2 starts now. Yeah, man. So, I mean, the NFL draft was pretty wild. You know, I think it kind of started out how we expected it. Cam Ward started off number 1 overall, and then, fireworks kind of started off with the Jags, trading up there with the Browns.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really expect that Jags trade. I thought they were pretty settled on, like, maybe getting Ashton Genty where they were. We talked about how there was rumors that they might be targeting him, but, I mean, looking at our draft, or our mock draft, we were right with most of the guys in that beginning part, just a wrong team because of that trade. But, no, I thought it was still pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, the one that shocked me really is to start it off was right at the 8th pick. I thought the Panthers would go defense, but I kind of love the pick of what they did, taking my number 1 wideout, 8 overall. I think he's a dynamic player, and I think he's going to be a great fit for Bryce Young.
Oh, yeah, I mean, their defense needed help. So, we had them going with the Jalen Walker, which is a good pick, but no one's going to complain about T-Mac going to the Panthers. I don't think anybody could argue with that's a bad pick. I mean, this weapon for Bryce Young is going to elevate that offense. And they also just signed Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah, the slot for the Raiders. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a veteran, had a year off, but I mean, as a slot, he's always been pretty dominant, especially around that goal line. I mean, they got Adam Thielen and Renfrow, and you could say they're old, but I mean, I guess we gotta wait till the season to see what they can produce out of that offense.
Yeah, some great veteran players, and what I really like about it is it's what you scouted T-Mac as is Dave Canales, got the job for his work with Mike Evans, and I think that's the thought process behind taking Tedero like that is that in his offense, a true X wide receiver that he's going to send on those vertical routes to win those contested catches for Bryce Young. That's exactly what they're going to get T-Mac to do. And Adam Thielen can kind of take that Chris Godwin role, which is what he's great at, because right now the offense has been forcing him to be something that he's not, a true number 1 receiver. Because Adam Thielen's 34 years old. He still is elite, separating 0 to 10 yards to the line of scrimmage. And I think it's going to really open up passing lanes for Bryce Young.
Yeah, I mean, Ted, you talked about that vertical threat. I mean, those 50-50 balls turned to 60-40 with the guy with his size. So, and yeah, you brought up Mike Evans' coach. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this Panthers offense, and I think you heard it here last week. I talked about how I think the Panthers might have a run, might go 9-8, might go 10-7. I'm really excited for them. I don't know about playoff berth still. I mean, that defense was so bad last year, and they still got some other holes in their team, but watch out. They might have a pretty decent year, above average.
I am with the way the AFC South is looking, and there's definitely the opportunities. I mean, the team picking right after in the Saints, they absolutely freaking reached on an offensive tackle. I mean, Kelvin Banks, pre-draft process, he's projected to be a top 10 pick, and then you go through his entire season, his full body of tape, and you start to see some major question marks with him. And the Saints pick sat there right at 9. We had them taking a different player, and they kind of reached on Kelvin Banks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really kind of confused about that pick. I'm kind of confused about the whole Saints draft class. They, you could argue that they needed an offensive lineman, and especially in the first round. Yeah, you'd want to go and get that, but was that really the best choice there? I mean,
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
Voice there. I mean, I know Mbambu was off the board. We had him going to the Saints.
Yeah.
You know, so I wonder if the Saints, like, should they have just said, all right, we'll go to the second round and pick up a guy there?
Yeah,
Let's try to pick up.
maybe they were forced in a panic pick. I mean, I don't know. I mean, really, the entire draft for the Saints was just a question mark after question mark. I mean, at pick 40, taking Tyler Shuck, a 26-year-old injury-prone quarterback, that to me was wild.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about how, they're going to need a quarterback for their long-term solution. They got Derek Carr, who has that shoulder injury.
Yeah.
And then they got Spencer Rattler as their second string right now, who he had flashes of, pretty good, and then some really bad moments. Is he going to be a long-term starter? I think the Saints were looking at no, and they want to fix that. And then, yeah, Tyler Shuck I thought that was crazy going with him.
It's just, he's a wild draft riser. I mean, turn on his film, you're going to see, he reminds you of Will Levis, a more chaotic, older Will Levis, which is not a good comp at all. Like, that's terrifying for them. I mean,
and on top of that, three season-ending injuries.
3 season-ending injuries, absolutely.
That's tough.
I mean, if they were going to go quarterback there, I mean, honestly, I would have preferred to see Jalen Milroe at that point. At least take a crazy freak athlete that you can, maybe hand the ball and run around with. Or, we mocked them trading out to take Shadur. It turns out that Shadur really rubbed some, some NFL teams the wrong way throughout the pre-draft process. But I do think the fandom, as far as them, lambasting the pick from a coach's perspective, it still, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, they could have waited to pick another quarterback. It's just, to me, when I look at that draft class, it's just a little odd to me. Them and the Browns, I would say, they're just odd.
No, definitely. But, I mean, the Browns, it looks like, I really like how their draft started out, because if they weren't sold on Travis Hunter, get a haul, which they did, take best player available of Mason Graham, I think is a high floor player. Top of the second round, you take one of the best defensive players left on the board, and the linebacker, the Carson guy, and then
the UCLA linebacker.
Yep.
Man, he looks pretty good. I'm excited to see him in the Browns role. And then they went and got Travion.
Quinshon Judkins. Yep.
Oh,
the other one from Ohio State. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I had Quinshon rated higher than Travion just because I think he's a true, downhill physical back that's going to run in their gap scheme for the Browns. And, I mean, I love the top of their draft, and then they make the most head-scratching pick of the draft in the third round and take Dylan Gabriel, 24-year-old quarterback that's 5'11", with no physical traits, played in college for so long because he didn't really have an NFL career. And then you follow it up with the next quarterback, and in the Sanders fall, I mean, to me it makes no sense what they were trying to do there.
I was going to say this for later, but I'll say it now. I felt like the Browns drafting room they had 7 of their scouts each make the pick. They weren't allowed to talk to each other. They weren't. They weren't allowed to make a plan, and they weren't allowed to know who the other scout before them selected.
Oh, absolutely. Honestly,
random.
They probably got Jimmy Haslam's dog, got their draft board, threw some syrup on there, and it was like, hey, which paper is the dog licking? That's who we're going to pick in the later rounds. It's honestly probably what they did. Did you see the draft room when they drafted Sanders? It was
pretty awkward.
It was very awkward. It was one of the more wild moments of the draft, for sure.
Yeah, going 2 quarterbacks in the third and then the fifth. I don't know how many teams have really done that. 2, and especially the one that slid, Shadur.
Yeah, I think Mel Kiper and his rants about Sanders for the draft night was saying something like it's the first time in X amount of years that a team, like, uninterrupted took quarterback. Like, there was no other quarterback taken in the draft between those 2 QBs, which, right, wrong, or indifferent, this is kind of how it played out. But another one that stood out to me was, Tyler Warren falling all the way to 14. He was our number 4 player. We didn't have him making it past the Jets. And I think the Colts, for what they needed and the pick that it was an absolute steal.
Absolute steal. You are correct. I mean, the Jets, we had them going to the Jets, which I think could have been a good fit. But they went with Mbambu, which is maybe even a better pick for them, honestly, for the future.
For what they
And then
need, probably so.
oh yeah, and we want to protect Justin Fields. They have some weapons, you could say. They got the two running backs, and they got Garrett Wilson, who's a dog. I guess they believe in their tight ends that they have now. And then the Bears skipped out on him. I'm going to say that for later because I can't believe that. And also, I think the Colts at 14 getting Tyler Warren, a 6'6" tight end who's a gadget guy. Whoever's quarterback for them next year, DJ, Daniel Jones, or AR, they're going to have a great weapon right there. And look at their wide receiver room. I mean, MPJ, they got Downs, and then they got Alec Pierce.
And that guy from Texas, Adonai Mitchell, I'm telling you, he was a draft riser for me last year. He is a big, physical, fast wide receiver. And I think if AR-15 can't figure it out, Daniel Jones is going to have an embarrassment of riches with skill talent here because this might be a hot take for me. I think Daniel Jones, for the last couple of years with the Giants, has been set up to absolutely fail. He's had zero line, no one to throw to, and has just been expected to create. And then he finally gets Malik Neighbors, and after 8 games, they bench him. And someone had Malik Neighbors in fantasy, you could tell Malik Neighbors had 1,000 receiving yards in like the 9 games that Daniel Jones played, and then it absolutely cratered after Daniel Jones was benched and eventually released.
Look, I think this could be a fair comparison. Sam Darnold, when he had no weapons on the Jets, spends a couple years in limbo, goes over to the Vikings with weapons and a great coach, and look what happened. So yeah, if AR struggles in the beginning, even if he even starts, like Daniel Jones, I think he's pretty good. And with that, just weapons on offense, we just talked about those 4 wide receivers. They already have Mo Alley Cox, and they pick up Tyler Warren now, and they got Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. There's a lot of quarterbacks that could succeed with that offense very well. So no excuses.
For sure. And something that shocked me, where I'll say that I was wrong, is I thought the Broncos were dying to get Omarion Hampton and were really looking to get him as a player. And he was there on the board at 20, and they sat there and they did not go offense. They went defense in Jahdae Barron, in which Jahdae Barron's an absolute dog, don't get me wrong, but I thought he wouldn't make it past the Buccaneers at 19, and the Buccaneers, I think, shocked everybody, and they took Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about the Broncos real quick, I guess they believe in Jaleel McLaughlin and Estime.
Audric Estime.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't terrible. I thought they were actually pretty good last year, but they lost Javonte Williams, so yeah, I think they would have. It seems like they would have picked up a running back there, but then they went and picked up R.J. Harvey.
Which is great value. So. He's an exciting little gadget player. I think Sean Payton's probably going to stick with what he's always done and just go running back by committee, which, I mean, makes sense.
Those three can make a good committee.
I really thought, because I had Hampton as a top 10 player, I just really thought if Hampton was there at 20, that's where they were going to go. But
yeah, and I thought in my mock draft, I had the Broncos picking a wide receiver right here, but help out Bo.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess maybe the wide receivers they would have wanted went right at 19 to the Buccaneers, which to me that shocked me because I mean the Buccaneers have so many needs on defense. They really could use some more depth on the offensive line. There's the Donovan Jackson guy. There's Josh Simmons that fell at the end of the first round, and said they sit there and their GMs came out and said that was their highest rated player, and they took Emeka Egbuka. And I mean, Baker Mayfield he's going to struggle finding who he's going to throw to. He's got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Egbuka. Cade Otton's no slouch at tight end. I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches down there.
Yeah, I know. Baker's going to have his biggest trouble is going to be who to throw to definitely next year. And then, they got Bucky and Rashard White. So, I mean, that's why I still have in the NFC South the Bucks winning it, but the Panthers are going to be close behind.
Yeah. I bet the Panthers will be nipping at their heels. I mean,
yep.
I think that's going to be the race. But I mean, then also, the Atlanta Falcons, they took Jalen Walker at 15, which I loved. I thought Jalen Walker would be a top 10 player and wouldn't make it past the Panthers. And they took Jalen Walker. I think is going to be an elite chess piece for their defense. And then, shocker of the draft, they actually sent their first round pick next season to the Rams to trade back up and take James Pierce, who. Pre-draft, like we're talking about a year and a half, 2 years ago, James Pierce was talking about maybe being the number 1 overall pick, and then for whatever reason, production not matching it, him not testing as well, they started to fall down. But he's still a really good player, and maybe the Falcons are going to look like how the Texans did. Texans looking insane when they traded for their first round pick after taking C.J. Stroud to get Will Anderson, but maybe they finally found the missing pieces for their defense.
Their missing pieces of their defense was their edge, and they definitely helped that out with James Pearson, Jalen Walker, linebacker. I mean, he can blitz very well too. He's so strong. So the Falcons, I mean, their pressure on the QB last year was one of the worst in the NFL, and they went and upgraded it very well. Those are going to be some nice pieces. But hey, you said the shocker of the draft with that trade. I think the biggest shock was the trade right before that at pick 25. New York Giants coming back in.
Yeah, you're right, trading up not for Shador Sanders but for Jackson Dart. And I mean, I think we called it, in the last episode is, I had Jackson Dart rated higher throughout the entire process of Shador Sanders, and I'll kind of stand on the table. Quarterbacks in the NFL, it's going to be pick your flavor. It's always kind of what I've called it. It's you look for prototypical traits, you try to match those traits with the offense that you have, because every college offense, unless you're at North Dakota State or Stanford when Harbaugh was there, no college offense is really going to translate to the NFL. It's just not. It's a completely different game. The hashes are wider, timing's different, everything's based off of hand signals, so you're not playing with this elite knowledge of players. But when you get to the NFL, it's a completely different type of terminology. So when you're evaluating quarterbacks, you look for certain traits. And Brian Daboll, it's kind of came out through the pre-draft process. They had Sanders ranked higher. They give these quarterbacks an install package. Shador Sanders shows up unprepared with the install packet, argues with Daboll over it. But Jackson Dart shows up. He's hungry. He's prepared. He knows it. He shows the traits. They fall in love with them, and they trade up, and they go get their guy.
Mason, I don't know what you're talking about. Everybody at ESPN says that the NFL doesn't know how to evaluate quarterbacks.
Yeah, and that same dummy should have been retired in 2010 when Jimmy Clausen wasn't a Hall of Fame QB. So, but you're right. That's the deal. Legacy sports media is just wild with some of the takes they come out with and say, because they talk about expert talent evaluators not knowing how to evaluate quarterback when it might be the hardest thing to do in professional sports is evaluate that position.
Yeah, and you're going to tell me, you're going to watch some of Daboll's interviews and tell me he doesn't know what he's talking about. I mean, this is just one head coach. So, yeah, I think they know exactly what they're talking about. My thing with, if we want to talk, do you want to talk about the slide now?
Sure, yeah.
I think that talent-wise, he was pretty average in that mix, above average for this QB class. He was talent-wise, he was above average, I'll say that. But the leadership standpoint, I don't think anybody has anything to say about, they said he's overconfident and the swag. I don't think there's any of that.
Talking about Sanders?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that there's plenty of videos out there that you've seen of when he, kind of degrades his linemen. There's a video of when he's working out with Cam Ward and he says, "You had a running game. I didn't. I did not have a running game."
From a coach's perspective, the most insightful one is just when Cam Ward and Shador are working out. And you got one that's number 1 overall pick and one that's a 5th round pick. The number 1 overall pick says, when they look up my name, they're going to see Cam Ward, football player. They're not going to see Cam Ward, the SoundCloud rapper. And say whatever you want about Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, the way they want to brand themselves. That is what, for your franchise quarterback, there are 32 positions in the NFL where you are a starting quarterback in the NFL. You got to live, breathe, and die for that position. And I think that's the question most talent evaluators in the NFL left, is that at the end of the day, the game of football is not the most important thing in Sanders' life.
Yeah, and before everybody that's listening to this throws their phone against the wall complaining that we don't know ball, I mean, I think that you also have to look, there was all that we just talked about. And then, we talked about in the first episode, supply and demand. He did not, I think he slid after Dylan Gabriel, honestly. I thought that pick was crazy. I'm not saying Sanders doesn't belong in the NFL. And I don't think a 5th round pick was, he might have been worth a little more. But, just look at the NFL and what the needs were this year for, the draft picks. Quarterbacks were not a top necessity for every team. Hardly any of the teams needed a quarterback. So when you talk about slide, let's look at the picks of the teams that needed a quarterback. There weren't a whole lot. And so I'll say, I really think that Jalen Milroe was selected perfectly with the Seahawks.
Yeah,
But yeah, the third round Dylan Gabriel over Shador was a little weird. And I guess you could say, well, Dylan Gabriel went to the combine. That's not that super important. He did pretty good in the interviews, you could say, and then he carries himself well. You could also say, but I don't know.
yeah, that one's a head scratcher for me because Dylan Gabriel didn't also really show at the Senior Bowl at all.
Yeah, yeah.
To me, it screams a Stefanski pick. Stefanski saying that, hey, this guy has high cerebral traits. This is the type of quarterback I want. But if we want to talk about the Browns, I think that's been the Browns' biggest issue is Stefanski as a head coach and a play caller. He has a very certain way and certain type of quarterback that he wants, how he wants to run his offense. And for better or worse, him and Baker Mayfield clashed. So sent Baker Mayfield out of town. Now Baker Mayfield's thriving. Deshaun Watson comes into town. Better or worse, he's out of football. He's injured. They go hire Ken Dorsey to go call plays, and then week 9, rip it from him, and they go back to calling plays, and then Deshaun Watson gets hurt, and they're kind of fizzled out. And I don't think anybody thinks Deshaun Watson's ever going to play for the Browns again. And so now Stefanski's moving on to his next quarterback, and in his tenure there, his most successful, least problem quarterback has been a 40-year-old Joe Flacco.
Can we talk about that quarterback, that quarterback room right now?
That's what I'm
It's
saying.
insane.
It is
I
insane.
mean, you got Joe Flacco,
You got a 40-year-old Joe Flacco. You've got
Super Bowl champ,
Super Bowl champ
and then you got
Hey,
Super Bowl champ Kenny
Kenny
Pickett,
Pickett, exactly. And then you're throwing in
and
two rookie quarterbacks. That's
a $200 million quarterback who's not probably going to play again.
one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league right there.
I just don't
Absolutely.
understand that
Quiet, I am rolling.
quarterback room.
No, I think that's definitely going to be one of the more exciting things to just kind of keep tabs on over the summer and training camp is what is going on with that room, because I think it'll be the most funniest thing ever if a 40-year-old Joe Flacco is starting for the Browns again in 2025.
In my opinion, he'd be the best. And I'm a big Jerry Jeudy fan, so I hope that happens because I think Jerry Jeudy played his best ball when Joe Flacco was tossing him the rock. So,
I don't know.
Let's go Joe Flacco.
Jameis Winston was slinging it for him too.
he was good.
Which, I mean, do you think the Giants are going to have a QB battle? Do you think they'll let famous Jameis, push for that job, or is it just the Russell Wilson show? Are they going to let Russ bake?
I'm not the biggest Russ fan, but I think they're going to go with him. His moonball is still there. He showed that in Pittsburgh. And they got a really good young wide receiver, Malik Neighbors. That wide receiver room's not bad either. Wandale Robinson, Darius Slayton. They're not. I mean, I'm not going to say they're fantastic, but it's a well-rounded wide receiver room, especially headed by Malik Neighbors. So let Russ cook. Yeah, let him throw that moonball to Malik. Let him go up and get it, because I'm betting my money that he's going to come down with it. And let Jackson Dart sit a year. I mean, he'll probably enjoy himself having fun with Jameis Winston on the sideline and learning from Russ. That would be great for him.
Which Brian Daboll's proven he can develop quarterbacks. I mean, the reason he got the Giants job is because he turned Josh Allen to what Josh Allen became. Is you watch Josh Allen's rookie season and you think there's no way in God's green earth he's going to end up being a league MVP, and then by the time Brian Daboll's leaving, he's playing at the level that he's at, and it just makes me wonder for Brian Daboll if when he had got to the Giants, they had let them actually rebuild. Because when he got there with a roster that shouldn't have been contending, he got them to the playoffs. They went 10-7, and they beat the Vikings in the wild card round, which I don't think anybody had happening, and they did. And they've just been on a slide since. But I'm excited to see how Dart develops over time. That might be my hot take of the draft, is I think right now, with the situation Dart entered, he might have the best chance to develop to be a franchise QB, because the Titans, with the way that their roster is, it's gonna all be down on Cam Ward to create on offense.
Yeah, they're just gonna let Cam Ward they're just gonna tell him to go out there and see what he can do best. I mean, the Titans they're pretty far away. The Giants are much closer to a better rebuild than the Titans, but when you were talking, I was thinking about what if the Giants still had Saquon? What would we be talking about right now? Would we be talking about playoffs with their defense loaded now? And if they got rid of Jones and kept Saquon, what would we be looking at right now? I think
what we would be looking at is if they'd done that is honestly we might be talking about Cam Ward on the Giants with Saquon in the backfield if they'd gotten rid of Daniel Jones and really tanked it this last season, legitimately.
Yep, and
Like
that wouldn't be tough.
if
That's all what if though, but
if DeVito, give me my money, DeVito was starting the entire season, they definitely would have been, in my opinion, the number 1 overall pick. But coulda, woulda, shoulda. That's
yeah.
the name of the game.
What did you think about the rest of this draft right here?
I think kind of the back half of the draft, you kind of saw what we somewhat sort of expected. Offensive linemen, interior offensive linemen were going early, and the second they started going off the board, you see the Texans trade out with the Giants. They end up picking up, their talent in the second round, and we actually predicted, which I think is hilarious, the Eagles and the Chiefs picks. They just traded spots to take the players, which I thought was kind of wild.
Yeah. I think that looking at the Buffalo Bills, Maxwell Hairston right there was that was a good pickup.
Yeah,
Kind of jealous about that.
because didn't you have him going to the Packers?
I wanted the Packers to pick him.
Yeah. How do you
So,
feel about Matthew
kinda
Golden at 23?
Man, our whole wide receiver class is under 6 foot now. And don't tell me about Christian Watson. He doesn't play.
No, he does not.
You have to play to be 6 foot. He doesn't play, so it doesn't matter to us.
As someone who owns
You
him
know,
in fantasy,
he's always injured.
He's always injured. Yep.
But I like Matthew Golden. He's going to be a phenomenal athlete, but is he really what we needed right there? And I would have been maybe a little madder if we would have went Luther Burden. I think he would have been a great fit, but you don't like him. I think he would have been a great fit maybe a little bit. But then Jaden Higgins, we picked up the TCU guy in like the 4th round who's a good size. But I think that the Packers cater to the fans right there. In Green Bay, the draft, they haven't done it in like 20 years.
Go, Pat, go. Go, Pat, go. That was electric.
Yeah, also Matthew Golden said, Green Bay on 3, 1, 2, 3, Green Bay. All right. Dude, it's go, Pat, go. If he would have went up on the mic and said go, Pat, go, that would have been legendary. But he said 1, 2, 3, Green Bay.
Yeah.
He's a rookie. It's all right. We'll give him a pass. But if I would give the Packers draft a grade, it'd be like a C+, barely above average. So,
I like the receiver pick. It's just I read this somewhere and I kind of agreed with it. It was that the Packers are obsessed with having the exact same wide receiver. All of your guys are 5'10", 5'11". They're shifty. They're quick. They're not elite speed.
route runners.
Great route runners, but you don't have a Tyreek Hill. It's just like, hey, I'm going to go dust a guy. You don't have a big physical contested catch threat. They're just all the same body type, same play style, and I'm curious to see how it's gonna shake out for you guys.
Yeah, I'm hoping LaFleur has a great plan written up for us. Are we going to run the ball a lot more next year? Well, I wish we would have had a great sized wide receiver. A DK Metcalf, AJ Brown. Even a tall guy like D Hop. So I'm a little bit frustrated, but it's still a good pick. I'm hoping he has a great last name. Going to fit in well with the Packers.
So now we're kind of do this segment called the Draft Class Showdown, and kind of what it's going to be is I'm going to kind of give my favorite draft class from the draft and kind of give my reason why, and then we'll kind of go over it. And a draft that is growing on me more and more that I've thought about it after looking at it in its totality and just kind of the vision of what they're trying to build there and how they're equipping their young quarterback is the Chicago Bears. For everybody, it was a shocker they went Colson Loveland at 10th overall, but the more that you look at it, the type of player that he is, 6'4", 235, 240, he's going to be a chess piece for Ben Johnson. He's going to use him intermediate routes. He's going to line him outside, line him up out in the slot, and he's as an H-back sniffer. I just think he's going to be a security threat for Caleb Williams. And then they could pick up Luther Burden, a wideout I don't necessarily love, but I think he could be a great slot. And you pair him up, replace him with an old man Keenan Allen with a young, shifty wide receiver. You got Rome Odunze and DJ Moore. You pick up a developmental tackle in Ozzie Tapilo that can push Braxton Jones. And then you go for depth with Shamar Turner for your defensive line. I really love their draft.
No. I thought they were so stupid. It is such the Bears move right here.
I am rolling.
Everybody had Tyler Warren going as the number 1 tight end in everybody's draft. And they went with Colson Loveland, who, don't get me wrong, he's still a great tight end. And he's going to be a good weapon for them, just behind Cole Kmet. But, Ben Johnson, I thought he was going to try to do, a two tight end personnel here. Bring in Tyler Warren, which they had the chance to. I mean, Ben Johnson, one of the most creative minds right now, having Tyler Warren as a Swiss Army knife guy, a gadget guy, that offense, I think, could have definitely really been onto something. But they went with Loveland, who is really just a pass catcher tight end, in my opinion. They pass up on Tyler Warren. I think they're going to regret that, honestly, in a couple of years. But Loveland's still going to be good. But it's just like you already have Cole Kmet. You kind of got the same guy right there. So now they're just going to be competing, or are they going to start moving them around? Luther Burden, fantastic. They got another wide receiver. I'm excited to see how they use him. I'm a big Luther Burden fan, but he's going to be with. They hardly used Rome Odunze last year, but they got a new offensive. They got a whole new offense, so I guess I'll just wait there. But then thank goodness they got tackle because they really needed that.
Yeah.
They didn't just sign 3 tackles in free agency, right? I don't like that. I mean, it's good for the Bears. They didn't really need a tackle. They went and got one. You said he's developmental. Okay, that's fine then. They had 3 second-round picks, so I guess we're fine with that. And then Shamar Turner from Texas A&M. I think he was he the second or third best Texas A&M defensive line? When I was...
He's the third best. He's the third best.
Okay, when I was reading the reports on him, they were saying that when I was watching film and reading reports, they were saying that he's just a step slower from the year before. He didn't produce as much. He's strong, but I mean, he's a defensive tackle, but if he's gonna be slow enough to where the offense can just get around him, I don't really see the point in that. And then they went a bunch of developmental guys to round out the draft, but I mean, to me, I thought the Bears. I think it's pretty overrated, and I think they could have done a lot better. But it's the Bears.
A team that is known as the Bears. The Bears.
Hey, y'all heard it here first from our Warroom analyst. He hates the draft class from the Chicago Bears. Is it just because he's a Packers fan? Is he wanting to hate on them? I don't know, y'all. Maybe when the Chicago Bears wake up winning the NFC North and the Cheeseheads are 8-9 and wondering if Jordan Love's a franchise quarterback, maybe he's going to think differently.
Yeah, that ain't happening. I mean, I think Love is healthy this year. Love is healthy. We just signed Isaiah Simmons. We got Nate Hobbs. We just signed Aaron Banks, too. Jair's working on a contract that just came out today.
Injury-prone Jair, who never plays.
I know. I think there was a stat this season that came out that Jair's played 50% of all snaps since he's been here, which is terrible.
You can't deny, though, Jair is elite when he plays. That was kind of a hard shot, but he's just always injury-prone. But, I mean, I want to touch on one point just about Colson Loveland, just so that way maybe y'all can think in the way coaches view tight ends. Tight end position, you recruit the best athlete. A lot of people kind of look in and get lost in the fact of big size, big position. Some people might think Tyler Warren's the best athlete, but I mean, purely from a talent evaluation perspective, most NFL teams had Colson Loveland as a top 5 athlete in this draft. It is very rare for someone with his size, his physical traits, to be that quick and that fluid out of his breaks running routes. So, overall, just kind of looking at the draft, that's my hot take. I love it. You disagree? It's up to our viewers to decide. But you tell me who's your draft class that you went with that's one of your favorites.
Look, they didn't get all of their needs, but I thought the Seattle Seahawks had a really good draft. Starting off with Gray Zabel, North Dakota State guy, offensive guard. Fantastic athlete.
Coming from a small school.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, the FCS. But no, he was a great guard. He's very physical. He wanted to stay home, even when everybody's doing NIL, going around to get the bag. He said, I'm going to stay home and plant some more corn. You got to love that from the guy. And then he was the guy that after the phone call. Yeah, after the phone call, I believe Gray Zabel was the offense lineman that they said, what do you plan on doing next? And he said, well, I'm probably going to get off here and dive into these bush lights. He's going to be a Hall of Famer.
He's for the guys. That sounds like an all-pro offensive lineman for the next 15 years. That's what you want to hear. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then they went and got the second best safety. He's really good still, just under Malachi Starks. They went and got Nick Emenwari out of South Carolina.
The Legion of Boom. Legion of Boom going to make a return with that. Love that pick.
We could definitely see that. No, I'm not going to compare him to the Legion of Boom. But still, he's very physical. ESPN has him ranked as the number 1. safety. They don't know much though. I think it's Malachi Starks by a hair. This guy's still great. 6'3", 220. He's so fast. He's so physical for a safety. You don't really think that as a safety, but he's going to be a guy that everybody in the NFC West every wide receiver is gonna have their head on a swivel when they're taking a seam.
It's so on brand for the Seahawks. He reminds me of Cam Chancellor. I mean, big, physical, freak of nature athlete at the safety position that can cover. Like, he is gonna erase tight ends in the middle of the field, and it was one of my favorite picks of the draft. I thought it was so Seahawks when that pick happened.
Well, hey, if that was one of your favorites, let's keep on going then. They went and got Elijah Arroyo from Miami, tight end, big physical guy. He's huge, 6'5", 250. If you have time, watch some film on him because he's pretty fun to watch from a tight end. I mean, he looks like A.J. Brown with a little more size, and he's just running great routes. He's going to be a huge target for them, I think, with the new era down there up there in Seattle. And then they went in the third round. Huge surprise. But still a great pick. Jalen Milroe, we talked about him earlier. He's development, but I think his ceiling is pretty high. He's incredibly athletic. He's one of the fastest guys on the field, probably at all times, and he just happens to be able to throw it pretty well too. Let's work on his passing game, passing knowledge, and let's see. Seattle start a dynasty right here with quarterbacks. What? I thought that was Green Bay, but no, I thought that was. Why not? Because you got Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
Only
on
he's been in the
contract
for a while.
So, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, let's why not? Let's get a rookie in here and start learning and start getting the reins. And then I liked Torrey Horton out of Colorado State. I might talk about him later. Great weapon. He had a fantastic game in that thriller against Colorado when it went into double overtime. So that's a great pickup there. That wide receiver room is going to be pretty good with Cooper Kupp, Jackson, and now Torrey. And then they finished it out with some great guys too. But those were my highlights of it. Big fan of that draft class.
I'm right with you. I think our Warroom analyst here has kind of hit it on the head. You see it all around ESPN. A lot of them have graded their draft really high, but I think they haven't really touched on the real reason why. Their first two picks, Gray Zabel, Nick Amon-Warrior, they are top 15 talents in the draft. In my final mock draft, I had Gray Zabel going at 12 to my Cowboys, and that's who I wish they would have taken. I mean, that guy is a physical mauler. He's a great athlete, great player. He plays with length. So he uses his hands. He strikes the chest plate every time in pass pro. Turn on his pass pro tape. It is actually elite. And you're going to slide him in at guard next to Charles Cross. Pure cinema in pass pro. So, I mean, really, the Seahawks, I think Mike McDonald has rebranded his team in the way that he wants to. They're going to be a physical run play-action team. That's why they went and got Sam Darnold. That's why they went and got Cooper Kupp. That's why they're kind of rearranged the way that their offense is going to work. They got the offensive coordinator for the Saints when they were cooking when Derek Carr was healthy this last season. And, I mean, I think the Seahawks' draft class is absolutely one of the biggest winners. I'm excited to see kind of where they go, and I think it's going to be a real competitive division, in the NFC West.
Oh, yeah. Where's your second team at?
My second team's right in the NFC West, too, and I'm going to go with the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals, going into the draft, a lot of people right after night one did not like the pick with Walter Nolan for character concerns or whatever, because he rubs some people the wrong way. But, I mean, I think actually Coach Prime said it best. He's got this wild take out there that you want your D linemen to be, very hungry, ADHD, can't sit still kind of guys. And Walter Nolan screams at me. He's a very athletic, bendy, twitchy, massive defensive lineman at 6'3", 305. And I love the pick there. I think that they got the better defensive tackle. I think the Dolphins reached on Kenneth Grant. And then you go in the second round, and they get what a lot of people thought was a top 10 talent in this draft class. I think you had him mocked at 11 to the 49ers in our mock draft, and Will Johnson. He was my corner number one. obviously his medicals came back, and that's why he fell a little bit. They were scared about a medical on his knee, but I thought that was elite for their needs, what they needed, and I loved the Will Johnson pick. And I think in the later rounds they just took best player available. They didn't push or rush any pick. They took the depth that they needed, and I think he's got some toolsy players that he's going to need for his defense. Jonathan Gannon and having Josh Sweat, Walter Nolan, Will Johnson now on their defense are going to be some real pieces for the Cardinals to where their defense is now going to match how competitive their offense is.
Yeah, and Walter Nolan is going to be the guy that just clogs that middle. And if, the NFL is going to go that direction with running it all the time, they got a great guy to stop that. I feel bad for Will Johnson. I mean, I have him ranked pretty high. He's such a good athlete, lockdown corner. Everybody, at least I thought everybody would be happy to have him. Turns out he has something wrong with his knees. So that's a big bummer. That's why he slid. He was a big slide, which I'm bummed about that. But then they went in the 4th round, they went Ohio State with Cody Simmons. And then in the 5th round, they went Ohio State with Denzel Burke. Back-to-back Ohio State, why not? I mean, let's choose the national champions, right? I think that makes sense there. I remember a couple years back, Georgia, the Packers kept on picking, like, with their 1st and 2nd round, they'd go with a Georgia defensive player.
Yeah.
So why not pick those, like, top 4, pick the guys from those top 4 teams, like a Bama, Georgia, Ohio, Michigan. Just pick them in later rounds. They got a great culture. They're definitely athletes because they're on a great championship winning team. So
that winning culture has a habit of multiplying by the people you're around. So you're definitely right on that.
Yeah.
Well, who is your second team that you have with a great draft class?
I know we talked about one team earlier, but I'm going to switch it up on you. I hope that's all right.
Ooh.
I know they had the 4th pick, and they chose Will Campbell, but I think they had a great draft after. The New England Patriots are going to be my second team. I mean, Will Campbell, they won. That was such a great pick right there. They needed him, and he was definitely the best lineman in my opinion. I know you really like our man, but Will Campbell, I mean, I got hyped.
Just pause it and literally watch his pre-draft interview or his post-pick, what he had to say.
I bring that up. I'm willing to die.
I'm willing to die
him.
to protect Drake May. I mean, that's absolutely. I don't think Mike Vrabel could have picked a better Mike Vrabel pick.
Of course, Mike Vrabel would go with that guy.
Yeah.
You are brought to New England to protect Drake May. What kind of tone are you going to set on this offensive line?
I'm going to fight and die to protect them with everything I've got.
Great for the locker room immediately, and he's going to protect that left side if that's where he's going to be at for Drake May. I know they went Travion Henderson. They needed a running back. I think he might have been best available. Great guy. And then I love Kyle Williams out of Washington State. The guy can fly. So these 3 picks right here, and then I'll go to the next one. Jared Wilson from Georgia. All right. So they went 1, 2, 3, 4 straight picks. The first 4 were all to help out Drake May. They truly believe in him. They have some weapons already. They went and got Stephon Diggs. He's going to be coming off that ACL injury, but he's still going to be there. And they went and got him some weapons and some protection. Look, Mike Vrabel and the Patriots are going all in on Drake May, which is fantastic. And the Patriots are looking to make a run here. They got some weapons.
Yeah, I have a hard time disagreeing with you. I mean, that's why he's the expert, the Warroom analyst here. He knows everything about the draft. Liam Carr, y'all make sure you follow his draft boards throughout the mock season for the 2026 season. I mean, the Patriots, they did the best they could with what they needed to do, which was get Drake Mason help, and that's exactly what they did. I love their draft. I thought maybe Travion Henderson wasn't the greatest selection. I had some running backs that I liked better, but that's just kind of my profile. Travion Henderson's is a slimmer slider running back, but I mean, he's great. Physical, runs downhill, is obviously explosive enough, and I think it was solid value for where they got him. And you hit it on the head. Kyle Williams is great value in the 3rd round. He has physical traits and potential to maybe one day develop into being a long-term answer at wide receiver for him. And you're picking that up in the 3rd round. It's excellent value. I mean, I think people are going to be surprised. It's going to be a lot like how the Chargers were by just replacing the coach that they have there, a competent coach, surrounding your quarterback with some help that's going to bring a culture. They're going to be a tough out for every team that they play. I can easily see them going 7-10 and only losing 4 or 5 one-score games, and they would have been a playoff team after their draft for sure.
Yeah, and then real quick, let's just fill in who else they have. I mean, they got Ramondre Stevenson, who's a pretty solid every down back.
Yeah.
Demario Douglas, and they picked up Mac Hollins as well, who doesn't statistically have a great year, but he's still a great guy, and he's made some great catches for the Bills and Atlanta the past 2 years. So they got some weapons.
Mac Hollins is one of those guys that just has a habit of showing up. Like, he's a chain mover. He's going to end up with only 400 or 500 receiving yards, but all 400 or 500 of those seem like they come on 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 7, moving the chains for first down.
Well, he's a great target. He's tall. He's 6'4", 220. So, but I think it's also his non-stat stuff. I think he's a big physical guy to where he gets a lot of those blocks. So, yeah, I think the Patriots have a great setup with this draft.
All right, now kind of moving on, we're going to go to our Hot Take Showdown segment. And, for me, our Warroom analyst has one that I don't really agree with. From a coach's perspective, Travis Hunter, truly the kind of player that he is, he's generational. I mean, what he did on defense and offense through 14 collegiate games was undeniable to the kind of athlete that he is. I mean, 1,300 receiving yards, 14 total touchdowns, having 7 interceptions, 4 returned for a touchdown, being what many talent evaluators had as the wide receiver 1 and defensive back 1 in the same draft class is crazy. He's just a crazy elite athlete, being 6'1", 195 pounds. His film just screams someone that's going to start and play in the NFL for the next 10 to 15 years. And I mean, I think the Jaguars did what they thought they had to do, is make a franchise-defining move, trading up for him and getting him in to Duval country to go be there with Trevor Lawrence and make a dynamic deal with Brian Thomas on offense and then sprinkle him in on defense. So, I actually think that was a great pick personally.
No, look, I'll before you throw your phone.
Not me. I'm not throwing the phone. I think everybody that's listening to this is throwing the phone. Travis Hunter, what? Not a good pick?
Look, he's a fantastic athlete. Once in a generation. The guy's a phenomenal athlete, I'll say that. But for the Jaguars, here we go. I'm going to start throwing stuff at you. For the Jaguars to give up their first-round pick for next year, it means that they believe that, yeah, he is worth 2 players. So I think they're going to have him playing as the wide receiver and cornerback, which I don't like that, but that's what Travis Hunter wants. And he's a really good athlete, so why not?
He's going to be able to hold up playing both spots like that?
It's the NFL. Hardly any of the players can hold up playing their one position every single week.
I thought you said he was a generational athlete, though.
He is a general athlete, so I guess we'll have to see there. But still, it's the NFL. He's going to get hit so hard, and he's going to be... And all the meetings he's going to have to attend, and the guy is going to take somebody else's spot, and they're going to get mad, and then... the coaches are going to have to dumb stuff down for him because, he definitely... Okay, let's say he makes all the meetings, every single meeting, so they don't have to dumb down anything for him. That's a lot on one guy. But I think that taking out somebody else's moment, like a nickel cornerback or, the 4th-string wide receiver, I just don't understand if he's going to play 2 positions when he goes in on offense for the wide receiver spot and he lines up. If I'm the defensive coordinator across from them, like a Carolina or... No, he's AFC. Like Houston, and I see Travis Hunter is in, I'm going to be like, oh, they're probably going to target Travis Hunter here. I think it's going to key in on the offense of knowing where they're going when he goes in. So he's worth 2 players, this year's draft pick and then next year's first round.
So being healthy. For our viewers here, I want to make sure I got this right. You're saying that Travis Hunter at number 2 overall was a reach. Like for the draft value that was traded, you're saying he was not worth what was given up.
Yes.
Y'all, that is wild. That is wild. This guy might be the only one out there that is going to go on the table and stand that. Mel Kiper is somewhere in his basement screaming about how you don't know how to evaluate NFL talent right now.
All right, sue me, but we'll see in 2 or 3 years. I'm gonna keep on going though. So he's even more his health weighs even more now. All right, because if he gets injured or worn out because the NFL takes a toll on your body, every week these guys are going through like 5 car crashes a game. All right, that's what the toll is on their body, something like that. So he has to stay healthy. And if he's not healthy, and he's 80% wide receiver, 80% cornerback, that's costing the people more. He's going to get taken out. He wants to play both sides. You can't do that. You got to understand that. And then I'd love to talk about this. Pull up Travis Hunter versus T-Mac in college. Arizona versus Colorado.
I knew you were going
right?
there. I knew you were going
And
there.
then once you're done with that, pull up Travis Hunter versus Torrey Horton, Colorado State, Colorado. All right? And then once you're done with that, pull up Travis Hunter versus Ilik Manor. All right?
He's came
Stanford
with the
guy
receipts, y'all. He's come with the receipts.
that just got selected by the Titans. And then once you're done with that, all right, one more. Travis Hunter versus Kyle Williams. All right? What's the connection with all of those guys? All those guys were selected in this draft.
NFL
And all those guys whooped him at least once, twice, 3 times, many times. Torrey Horton, he was getting whooped so bad, he switched off of him. T-Mac was whooping him so bad, they switched off of him. They had to go zone because he could not keep up with T-Mac. That's understandable because T-Mac is really good. A.O. Manor dogged them that game. Stanford, I think, got whooped, but
Stanford just wasn't very good as a team, so yeah.
But they had him, and that matchup against Travis Hunter was really sad to watch. And then Kyle Williams, you can find a quick YouTube clip of that. I just watched right before this, but Travis Hunter was talking smack. Great for a cornerback. Great. You always got to have that mentality of I'm the best ever. All right. But Travis Hunter did that. He threw Kyle Williams into the stands. There was some shove into like a Gatorade water bottle bench. Next play, or I think it was next possession for Washington State, Kyle Williams does a little hitch and go,
No.
a little stop and go, a little wheel route. I don't remember what it was. Whooped Travis Hunter, got burnt. I mean, Travis Hunter was like 10 yards back, wasn't even on the screen. Terrible. So these are just the rookies that Travis Hunter is going against right now, and he was getting whooped. All right. So to put him as cornerback, I think it's going to be a liability. He's going to go against. Let's see in the AFC South who he's going to be going against. Nico, pretty solid. I don't think he's going to take that in one spot. He's going to guard the guy at 2, which they just picked up Jaden Higgins, so I guess we'll see that matchup.
Yeah.
Excited for that. Who else do we have in the AFC South? I'm drawing a blank. Oh, the Titans.
Calvin
So they're going to
Ridley.
play the Titans.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's going to have to rematch A.O. Manor from Stanford.
You're right. Yeah.
I'm excited for that. Who else is in the AFC South? I'm drawing a blank.
Got the Colts,
Is
Michael
it-
Pierce, Alec Pierce,
He's
Michael
going to have to guard
Pittman.
that wide receiver room that's solid.
Yeah.
All right, so he's going to have to pick up one of them, and he's going to struggle. I think he's going to struggle against that AFC South, and then who else do they play the remainder of the year? So, look, I think as a cornerback, I have some friends that think he's a better cornerback than wide receiver, but I don't think so. And then if you want to talk about wide receiver, I brought this stat up last time. 40% of his touchdowns came in garbage time or against FCS teams. And I will say that North Dakota State touchdown, that one where he did a little zip route out to the end zone, and it was heavily contested, that was a great catch. All right, so let's take that one off. But still, I mean, his garbage time, don't throw stats at me to say Travis Hunter is the best. He's a great wide receiver because he had 15 touchdowns last year. Garbage time,
Everybody
I don't like-
produces in college, for sure. For sure.
Okay, yeah, and I'll throw a guy
That's
at
an
you, Nick
NFL
Nash. I
talent.
like Nick Nash. He was just a unsigned free agent to Atlanta.
And
He
he's
had-
the
he was
triple
a
crown
triple
winner. Yeah.
All right, and he wasn't in a good program. People say that's why he didn't go. And you said he's not very physical, but anybody can put up good stats in college football. So I think with all that being said,
I think
he's going to be a great athlete.
Yeah.
But I think that he has. I think given up so much, and let's say he gets hurt week 7. I hope he doesn't. But what if every player in the NFL gets hurt? Okay, let's
Are you
just say
saying
that.
he's not going to win
Well-
offensive and defensive rookie of the year? What? You don't think he can win both awards?
No, and let's say he's not the best wide receiver in the class. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Tet, all right, Tet is the best wide receiver. So they gave up next year's first round pick for the second best wide receiver in the class. That does not make any sense. That's
No,
what I think.
and I mean, truly, just kind of like I think you made some really great points, and I think the Jaguars' plan is that they just decided that he is that good of an athlete, he's that special, that we can make him specialize at wide receiver where he'll ultimately become a top 5 wideout. And I mean, you've provided evidence that he might not, and that just by not specializing, he might not end up being a special player. And I definitely think there's some evidence to suggest that would cause some worry for it. And as hot as of a take it might be for our viewers and some people that just casually pay attention to college football and the NFL, I do think that there's some validity to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got everything that I wrote down, or just threw off the dome. But
Nice.
hey, man, I heard that Jackson Dart. I heard you think Jackson Dart is going to be the best quarterback out of this class. Now, I know that we talked about how this class doesn't have the best quarterbacks, but choosing Jackson Dart, I mean, Cam Ward, phenomenal athlete, playmaker, first round. He was the first overall pick. You got Jalen Milroe, who has a pretty high ceiling for being a late pick. You got Shador on the Browns and Dylan Gabriel. That's gonna be exciting to see.
That'll be.
And then you got Will Howard going to the Burr.
Yeah.
He's gonna have a chance right now. He's gonna have a chance to start against Mason Rudolph, and he's a national champion. And then you got Tyler Shook. And then who else? Am I missing anybody else?
No,
I don't know.
think you hit them all.
You got
I
some other
mean,
quarterbacks, and you think out of all of that, Jackson Dart.
look, guys, I was
Why?
to tell you this. 5 years from now, Jackson Dart will be the best quarterback from this draft, and here's why. He's entering the best situation. Cam Ward is the number 1 overall pick entering the Tennessee Titans. I think that he is entering a terrible situation. I am not sold on Brian Callahan as a head coach. Brian Callahan never called plays until he became the head coach of the Titans. He was a non-play calling OC for the Bengals. And what did the Bengals do? They never gave Joe Burrow an O-line. What does we do at the Titans? Yeah, they've signed some old free agents, some washed-up offensive linemen. They're going to try to piecework together. Cam Ward doesn't have an offensive line. His best wide receiver is a 31-year-old Calvin Ridley, who's really only played 4 years of organized football, only 4. For his gambling, whatever, hasn't been around, entered the league late, age 26. He's only played 4 years. That's his number 1 wideout. That's who we're saying is the best one that he's going to have. And then his second is a 4th-round wideout from Stanford, a football team that sucked in college. So for me, why I say Jackson Dart is I believe in Brian Daboll and his development with quarterbacks because of what he did with Josh Allen and what I think he's going to be able to do with Jackson Dart. But more importantly, Jackson Dart throughout the pre-draft process, any football coach that watches his tape will tell you that they love him just for the way that he shows up on tape. The way that he competes shows up on tape. Every time that pressure is breaking down, the pocket's breaking down around him, chaos is seeming to be everywhere. He's calm. You want your general on the field, the commander of the troops out there to remain calm, and he does. And he goes and he finds the check down, he finds the throw, where he's athletic enough to extend a play, and that's what Jackson Dart does. Very rarely Ole Miss, watching their entire 2024 offense and their entire breakdown, they were top 10 in college football in base down efficiency. So base down is first and second down, and normally in college football, on first down you're trying to get 4 yards. That's what's considered an efficient play. And then on second down, you're trying to get half of the distance. So that's going to put you at 3rd and 3. And then 3rd and 3, third down, if you get 40 to 50% of the third downs, that's considered efficient. And Ole Miss's offense on first down, getting 4 yards per play, they averaged 57%. Which is absolutely elite. Most college teams average 41 to 42%. They were at 57%. Then you go to second down, and there's not a drop-off. It's at 55%. And then you go to 3rd and short and 3rd and medium, and they were hovering around 35-40% efficiency. And who's the quarterback leading all these drives? It's Jackson Dart. So, Jackson Dart, for me, he might be somewhat physically limited. He's not a Justin Herbert. He's not a Caleb Williams. He's not a Josh Allen. He's not some big, crazy physical freak. But he has a live enough arm. He plays the position with a natural feel for it. And he's athletic enough to do what Brian Daboll likes to do in his offense with the Q run game. So I think 2, 3, 4 years from now, when you wake up, Jackson Dart has sat for a year. He's developed with the Giants. The Giants have played competitive. Their defense, they leaned on their defense. They've now started to draft some offensive linemen. Malik Neighbors is coming into his own. And by the time Jackson Dart starts, he's going to enter the best situation with an actual play caller. And he's going to be the franchise quarterback the Giants have been wanting since Eli Manning.
You bring up a fair point. I like you believe in Brian Dable. He's inheriting a pretty good situation over there. Like I said earlier, I like their wide receiver room, especially with Malik Neighbors. They got a great defense. I'm hearing that Thibodeau is on the way out. I think they picked up his 5th year, but I don't think they're going to re-sign him after that. I don't know if that's true. Somebody might want to fact check. But man, Cam Ward. I mean, come on. The Titans aren't very good. I'll say that. But they picked up a lot of guys to help him out. Calvin Ridley, this is going to be his year.
It's supposed to be his year for the past 3 years, and it hasn't been. So
this is going to be his year, and it's all him now. So, man, I just think Cam Ward is such a good playmaker. He's going to make something out of nothing. I mean, let's look at Ole Miss. I'm gonna tell you this right now. They had 8. I'm looking at my spreadsheet right now. They had 8 draft picks. All right, so it seems to me that he got a lot of help.
How many of those were defensive players? Was it 5?
5 of the 8.
5 of the 8?
Hey, it all helps everybody else out, though.
No,
the defense was helping put them in good positions.
No, and I mean, the other deal too with quarterback, it's always gonna be comparing apples to oranges. It's going to be whatever you choose to see out of a quarterback and what you believe in how they can develop. And Cam Ward, I do think he's exciting. I want to see the success happen for the Titans. From a coach's perspective, I think Brian Callahan is malpractice as a head football coach in the National Football League. I really do. He comes from it is the deep Sean McVay tree, but he's from the Zach Taylor tree. And I think Zach Taylor, any Bengals fan will tell you, the only reason he still has a job is because of how good Joe Burrow is. And
how good the offense is.
And how good the offense is. And Brian Callahan, the Titans had the worst offense in the league the first year he ever called plays. And you're telling me that's going to get better? I don't think it will. There's an entire...
I could argue Brian Callahan with you.
Oh, I know you won't, but that plays such an important position. That plays such an important role with the quarterback position. So, I mean, yes, Cam Ward, I think right now is a better player than Jackson Dart. And that's why he was picked first overall. I think we're going to wake up 5 years from now, and Jackson Dart's going to be the best quarterback from this draft.
Legacy-wise, we're going to look back and see Jackson Dart was the best. You're calling it. I guess we have to wait 10 years.
We don't have to wait 10 years. We have to wait till the first season Jackson Dart plays NFL football.
And that could be next year. Because,
next year.
Russ... Did they sign Russ to a 1 year or 2 year?
They signed him to a 1 year.
Mason, we could be talking about this next summer. How excited we were to see Jackson Dart.
How excited will y'all be a year from now? We're older, the Warroom, you've got an entire, freaking collection to binge to go back to this one. We called it here now, so, I guess we'll see.
Oh, well, yeah, we got to bookmark this.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, some of the big hot takes, coming out of the draft, and I think the prevailing theme from it, and, I think it's a curve that we're seeing coming back, is it's the return of the running back.
Yeah, I mean, look at last year. I think the 3 biggest free agent offensive signings were Saquon, of course. I mean, look what he did with the Eagles. Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs. All right, 3 running backs that elevated the teams that they were on. And then let's maybe try to analyze this draft. The most selected position was defensive tackles with 31.
And right behind them were interior offensive linemen at 28.
Especially in those first 3 rounds. People were picking those interior offensive linemen off the board like crazy. So, Mason, are we looking at the return of the running back, and what does that have to do with maybe fantasy that we're going to talk about next week?
Well, here's a coaching trend for you guys that might have not picked up on it. Since 2016, scoring in the NFL has been on a downward trend, and the reason why is most defenses, to combat these high-powered offenses, have switched to too high safety system. You might have heard the craziest take ever of, hey, we want to ban 2 high safeties because it's not fun or exciting. No, it
Was
just
that Mel Kiper?
that was Mel Kiper. See, we've been dogging on Mel Kiper because
Maybe
Mel
retired.
Kiper would not have a job if he was just not the first one to do this in the 80s. He has
What is
some
he talking
crazy
about?
takes. But
Anyways,
the reason why you're seeing the return of the running back is if you play 2 high safeties and you sit out there and you think you're just going to stop 12 personnel, the heavy fullback and Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson in the backfield, you're insane. And you see a lot of, in the NFL's copycat league, and that's what you're seeing right now. So I think it's the return of the running back. I think you saw it with the draft, what draft value is going to be. And, you know, kind of looking at fantasy football, Ashton Genty, Omarion Hampton are going to be league winners for whoever ends up for them.
I agree with that. I mean, Ashton Genty, he may not be behind the best offensive line. The Raiders have improved it. You know, and they got Pete Carroll. He loves the running back position. Look at what he did with Marshawn Lynch. He didn't do all of that. Marshawn Lynch was just such a beast. But, you know, he's definitely going to feed the rock with Ashton Genty, who is going to be such a high draft pick. He's going to be the number one in any dynasty leagues that you guys are in. Mario Hampton, you know, Harbaugh loves run the ball. Last year, everybody was saying, who are you going to pass it to? Who are you going to pass it to? He said, I'm going to pick Joe Alt with the first round, and we're going to run the ball like crazy. They went 10-6, something like
11
that.
and 6,
They got,
yeah.
They had a much better than expected year running the ball. Bucky Irving was nobody really talked about him before in the offseason.
Hey,
and then he turns out to be one of the best draft
Warroom
picks.
Dynasty League, our analyst was the one that found Bucky Irving and, you know, threw him out there and ended up beating me in the fantasy Super Bowl because of really Bucky Irving.
Hey, and not just because of him. Hey, but next week, Mason, I'll tease this right here. Next week, we're going to talk about how we draft fantasy football to help you guys maybe win. We're going to go based on value. You guys have to do some of the draft yourself, but we're going to give you maybe some, hey, look out for so-and-so because they might have some good value at their ADP, their average draft position, their ADP. We're going to look at that and say, hey, you can get a steal here with this guy. We'll tell you what later.
Yeah, so like the Warroom analyst said, I hope you'll really enjoy this week's episode because next week it's going to be all things fantasy football, looking at the outcome from the draft, some risers, some sleepers, the way that we draft, the evaluation that we have. So that way, when you go in to your fantasy league, you're equipped with some Warroom knowledge to dominate your fantasy league.
This is the War Room presented by the Sideline Channel. The film doesn't lie. Let's get to work.